In this workshop, we'll have fun with a big topic, which might be scary or intimidating or perceived as too technical for a lot of people, and that's perspective. We'll take a look at all the different types of perspective, from atmospheric one to linear and curvilinear perspective. By the end of this workshop, you'll have no problem not only drawing different perspective views, but also knowing and understanding when to use each type, how to use it to your advantage, and have fun with it on the way. We'll always start very simple and gradually get more complex and more fun one step at a time. I've prepared a number of exercises that will help you on the way. You can download all these printable worksheets, workshop material, and a bonus in a single PDF. So you can follow along as well as continue on your own once you finish this workshop. My name is Drazil and I'm an architect who loves to sketch. I'm the founder of sketchlikeanarchitect.com. I've published 3 books on architectural sketching. I create content online and I've taught more than 12,000 students in my courses. This perspective drawing workshop will be fantastic for you whether you sketch architecture, you're an urban sketcher or watercolor artist, or you do any other type of illustration. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Alright, so here I have the printed worksheets that, again, you can print out or you can paste them in your favorite drawing app on iPad, or you can just follow along with a sketchbook or loose sheets of paper. I'll be using a few tools. You don't need really anything extra or specific. I'll be using some of color markers, some fine liners, and maybe a pencil. You don't need anything else than that. Just one of these would be plenty. If you want to go with a ballpoint pen, that's fine as well, really. A lot of the times I'll be using this blue marker because it's nicely visible. Today we are talking about all types of perspective and when to use each type and how to get the most out of them. So what we'll be covering in detail are basically 3 types of perspective. Atmospheric one, which is originally used mainly in painting, then the linear one, the geometric one, the one that we think of when we say perspective, and then also a curvilinear one, which is examples of this 4 and 5 point perspective. Under the linear perspective, we'll be talking about 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, and multi-point, which is actually my favorite. So, alright, let's start with aerial perspective. Aerial perspective, this is a great example of that. And the thing about aerial perspective is that you don't need any horizon lines, vanishing lines, any geometry, and you could still perceive the depth. You can feel that here you have the foreground, which is closest to the viewer, and in the background there are some mountains as well, but you can feel that they are very distant. And this principle of suggesting this depth of atmosphere through the tonal change of value is called atmospheric or aerial perspective. As I've said, originally it's been mainly used in paintings. So anything that has surface color, color in areas, not just lines, that's very much where it's used. It's also in photography, film, concept art, you name it. Basically, the principle is like that you can, in the background, use a lot more saturated, darker colors. And as you go further away from the viewer, you use more pale, brighter, more desaturated colors. In this way, you will suggest the depth between the viewer and the objects that you're depicting. However, even though it works really nicely with surfaces or areas of colors, you can also apply it to a line-based drawing, which for us architects and designers is something that we use very often. And the principle is applied in a way that, again, in the foreground, we use darker contrast, darker shadows, more details, and thicker lines. And in the background, we use a lot less detail and a lot thinner lines. So in that way, we are suggesting what's more closer to the viewer, and what is further away. So this principle of aerial perspective can be applied to both paintings as well as drawings. And it's one of the great ways how to suggest or improve the illusion of depth in your images. Moving forward, I want to start from the very basics of some of the key elements of perspective, of the linear geometric perspective that we all kind of refer to. So what I want to start with is the horizon line, which is usually, but not always, a horizontal line at the very distant of our scene. It's basically imaginary. Very often it's also at the same position as our eye level, meaning where we have our eyes, our head, that's our eye level, and very often it overlaps with the horizon line. But it's not exactly the same, and I'll show you an example of that. That's the starting point. When I draw perspective, I always start with the horizon line, because on the horizon line, I usually can somewhere find vanishing points. Sometimes one, sometimes two, and sometimes more. And vanishing point is again a point on the horizon line where parallel lines in real life actually converge. Converge too, I guess. So they're converging towards the vanishing point. Next, we have ground line, which is where our picture plane is sitting. And picture plane is basically our canvas. That's where the 3D is projected onto to create 2D drawing. So these are some of the key elements of every perspective, every linear or geometrical perspective, which I might be referring to. So I just want to make sure that we are on the same page. And as you can see, let's just draw a few human figures, right? For someone who is standing very close, maybe in here, and he's standing on this plane, he would have his head in here, and then he would have the rest in such a way. Maybe he can wave at us. Hey, what's up? So that's someone standing quite close to us, but maybe we have another person which is standing over there, and it's a lot farther away, but their head are still on the horizon line. So if they are standing and they're on the same plane, their heads from this point of view would be always on the horizon line. One more to draw just in between. Another. So this is a little hack that you can use for eye level perspective, that all the standing people's head will be on the horizon line and they will feel like they're in the right place. Moving forward with 1 point perspective, there will be a little exercise in here as well, a little worksheet. Very, very simple. We'll start with the very basics. And I want to show you a few examples of 1 point perspective. And 1 point means that we have our horizon line, as we just mentioned. This is the horizon line, right? And we have in 1 point perspective, which is also called central or frontal perspective. Usually the one vanishing point is somewhere very in the middle, in the very dead center. And as you can see, we can use it for both interior views as well as exterior. So this is a typical composition of a room turned into somewhat a living room example in this. And we have also an exterior, kind of a little bit of urban scenery, typical street view with 1 point perspective. Let me grab the blue one so you can see it well. So again, this is the horizon line, roughly in the middle, but can be positioned differently, especially when it's exterior perspective. we have the one vanishing point and the street that is converging towards to it. And as you can see, these buildings are just supporting it. And what I want to say is that the fronts are always very flat and just one of the dimension is converging towards that vanishing point. From a composition point of view, what's really important about one-point perspective is that we place our focal points, the key areas that we want the viewers to really notice, somewhere around that vanishing point. That's where all these leading lines are really guiding our eyes to focus. So with that being said, let's do a little exercise. Let's start with this one. We have the horizon line somewhere in the lower half, which usually makes a nice composition for exterior perspective. And we have our vanishing point in the very middle. And what I suggested here are three different objects, rectangles or squares, and basically three different positions related to the horizon line. So we have one which is cut through. The horizon line cuts through this object. And if I want to draw it, I would just connect these edges, these corners to the vanishing point. And for now, I will just decide for a depth. And then I can outline the end result. And we already have a box in perspective. If I tried with this square, which is under the horizon line, I would connect it again and just go for depth that I see fit. And what's the difference here is that we can see its top surface because it is below the horizon line. And you probably can guess it, what happens if we draw the last object, which is above the horizon line. We'll be able to see its bottom surface because it's positioned above the horizon line. So you can hatch it out if you'd like to. So these are basically the three typical scenarios in relation to the horizon line, how objects can be positioned. And it's really nothing complicated, it's not rocket science, but it really helps to understand with the composition and how to place your objects, which part you want to see or you should see. So in this other example, you can practice another scenario on your own. So there will be 1 point perspective. With the 2 point perspective, obviously the scenario is a little bit different. We still have the horizon line and we have this, in this case, 2 vanishing points, right? And they're both on the horizon line. And very often, to ensure a realistic field of view, we keep those outside of our picture plane. This is a little bit extra piece of information, but if you're a little bit more nerdy and geeky about perspective, typical field of view for us humans, the way we see the world is driven by the rules of perspective. So if we're talking about how we as humans see the world, the typical field of view, how much we can see with our eyes, which is undistorted, is only 40 to 60 degrees. It's not much. And the angle between the 2 vanishing points is always 90 degrees. So we want to keep them outside and focus our picture plane on the kind of middle part, let's say the 60% between the vanishing points, right? So that's a little bit of extra. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, it doesn't matter for now. But it might be useful for some of you, hopefully. And again, we can create a typical interior view like this, which is based on this construction, or we can have an exterior view. And when I try to find our horizon line is somewhere very low, somewhere here. And if I try to connect it with these edges, we have one of the vanishing points in here and the other is actually outside of our picture plane. What I want to focus on when it comes to perspective is how we place our objects in a 2-point perspective is very, very different from 1-point perspective. And in this case, you can see that the main edge is positioned somewhere in roughly maybe 1/3 of our canvas. But it's nowhere close to the vanishing points. So that's a very different approach to composition building of an image, to the image creation process. So I think very differently of compositions of 1-point and 2-point perspective. And once again, we have a super simple exercise to practice 2-point perspective. In this case, we have the horizon line pretty much in the middle, and we have again 3 scenarios, 3 edges for the objects. I'll go ahead and connect them as well as you can go now. I will just choose a depth that I see fit. All right. All right, I will just outline these objects with a little bit thicker brush pen so it's more clear in this mess of lines. And again, what we can see is the difference between an object where I can see its top surface and the one that I can see bottom surface, which is placed above the horizon line. And of course there's also the middle one, which just cuts through with the horizon line. Again, you can grab this very small kind of thumbnail sketch worksheet to practice another scenario of 2-point perspective on your own. All right, and now something that I kind of mentioned at the beginning, and that's the scenario where our horizon line isn't actually horizontal. So we have a 2-point perspective, but turned sideways. So the horizon line is actually positioned vertically. And in here, we still have our eye level, or the physical horizon. So the horizon line for the construction of perspective is not exactly the same as physical horizon. Physical horizon is more the eye level, but the horizon line, perspective one, is a line where we place our vanishing points. And sometimes we can just flip it like this to substitute a bit of an effect of 3-point perspective, the very vertical one, and make it easier for ourselves. Because the other direction, these are all straight lines. They are not converging to anywhere. They are parallel to each other, right? All these stairs, they're all straight, horizontal, parallel to each other, and yet we have the illusion of very vertical perspective. That's a little bit of piece of extra information for you to look differently at 2-point perspective. It can be typical corner view of a building as we had before, but it can be also turned into vertical. Now, 3-point perspective. 3-point perspective is, let me illustrate it on this example. Let's find the horizon line and the vanishing points. I can just connect 2 of these every time to find somewhere here would be one. Here is another one, and we have the vertical one, which is somewhere here. So we have 1, 2, and 3 points, 3 vanishing points. But you can see that only 2 of them are on the horizon line, which in this case is very high because we are looking down on a bunch of skyscrapers. And we have a third one positioned somewhere in between those 2, very often kind of in the middle. And either it's very, very low, below the horizon line, like in this case, or it can be high above the horizon line, like in this scenario. So basically we have 2 scenarios of 3-point perspective, the one where we are looking up and the third vanishing point is very, very high outside of our picture plane, very high above the horizon line, and that's called worm's eye view. That's like, imagine us being a worm looking from the ground up. That's how they see the world. On the other side, let's imagine you are a Superman and you're flying over the city. You can see everything from above. So your horizon line is very high and you can see top surfaces of everything. You can see all those skyscrapers, and that's what we call a Superman's view, or bird's eye view, to be more traditional. So these are the 2 ways how to look at 3-point perspective. Nothing too complex, just adding 1 more vanishing point either very below or very high above the horizon line. And now my favorite part, multi-point perspective. What the heck is that? Alright, so far we had 1-point and 2-point perspective, and each time we had that vanishing point somewhere on the horizon line. But we can actually have more than that. Imagine a scenario where you have buildings like this, where each of these houses basically converge to their own vanishing points. Anytime you have a scenario where your objects are not really parallel or placed in a orthogonal grid like this would be a 2-point perspective, right? This could be just a 1-point perspective. But what if they are like this? That's where multi-point perspective comes into play. And actually, as you can look around on your desk, usually not all the objects are really placed in one orthogonal grid, right? They're not. They're kind of rotated as they like. So this one, the multi-point perspective, is actually the most realistic one. So I think this is a great example to illustrate that. We have this final image, and as you can see, at its basis, it's a nice 1-point perspective with quite low horizon line. That's what it is. But we have this. We have this box which is rotated, and it doesn't fit into 1-point perspective grid, right? So that's where I need extra 2 vanishing points, one in here and one in here, to actually be able to describe it. So that's what makes this multi-point perspective. So anytime I have something just non-parallel, something like a pentagon, another example, or another example, if you'd like to draw a curvy road, like this one, we would have one vanishing point over there, one vanishing point over there, another over there. So right away we have a lot more vanishing points to actually describe this curved road. So it's very realistic, very visually interesting, and a lot of fun to do. So multi-point perspective uses just more than 2 vanishing points on the horizon line. Alright, and now to a little bit more fun and advanced stuff, which is curvilinear perspective. We'll be talking about 2 types. One is 4-point perspective, I'll write it big, and one is 5-point perspective. And basically what you can see in here, it's like a 2-point perspective with the horizon line in here and 1 and 2 vanishing points. But in this case we have 2 more vanishing points all the way here and up there. And it's not just straight lines that create our perspective grid, but it's also these curved lines like these. So as you can see from this image, it basically mimics a fisheye effect. Fisheye effect, right? When it's very distorted, we have a big field of view in both directions, but also the vertical one, and it can capture a lot more space in a very interesting way. Now the 5-point perspective, and here I've created kind of composition like from the Inception movie, but we still have the horizon line, and we have those 2 vanishing points, and also the extra 2 we have like in 4-point perspective, and we have one more, and that's in the very center, and that's the 5th one. So we'll take a look at each of these examples. Yes, basically that's what I've described. You have this in more detail with a little diagram of 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can actually play with which curves, which directions will be curved and which will be straight. So that's up to you. It can be flipped. But once you have this grid, you can just follow the lines to create your space or your lettering or your urban scene or whatever you'd like to do. It's a lot of fun, and it gives an extra visual interest to your piece. So you can think of this basically as a 2-point perspective plus that fisheye effect. That's what this is. Nothing too complicated, just adding a few other vanishing points. And we have also the 5-point perspective. Here's another example that we will actually draw together so you could see the process. It's not complicated. I highly encourage you to try it and just follow the grid with these 5 vanishing points. Alright, so that's something we'll finish up with. So you have something more tangible to take away from this workshop. And let's go through the process of drawing it together. And I think just for the sake of better visibility, I will draw it with this thick blue marker. But feel free to paste this in your favorite app or print it out or put a tracing paper on top or use it however you like to create a 5-point perspective view. In this case, we'll be drawing this kind of kitchen. And what I would start with is actually the very end but frontal wall. I'll just follow these lines. There will be a countertop, and this one will be to create the depth. We'll be using the 5th vanishing point. And now we're also a little bit curved. And then we have the table, another table in here. And again, and if I want to create the height of the table, I just always follow the lines of the grid. So it should be curved. And if I want to create the full room, I will just extend these, which go to the 5th vanishing point, to the center one. And already we have a room in a very immersive view. So we have a little niche over here. So let's draw the niche. It will be in the same height as this one. So I'll just follow along. Feel free to stop and pause this video if I'm going too fast. But basically, I'm just outlining the grid. And it's super easy, it's super fun. We're creating our own space. Let's add some shelf in here. And as you can see, the closer we get to the horizon line, the more flat the view is. Not that exaggerated, not that curved. When it's close to the center vanishing point, everything feels almost like 1 point perspective. Almost. Let's draw the lamp in here. All right, and one last piece, another niche with these shelves. And every time, just following the lines of the grid. All right. And to really suggest that and helps the viewer to understand the perspective, we can outline a tiling on the floor, which helps us to kind of ground it and make it more understandable. Like this. All right. I think that's pretty much it. Feel free to customize it, to color it, to draw it once again with different scenario, and just have fun exploring this 1 point, 2, 3, 4, 5 point perspective, curvilinear one. Maybe you can draw your own living room or your home office or your kitchen or whatever you like. It's a lot of fun. Try it out on your own with a different example once you are more comfortable. Alright, that's it for this workshop. I hope you had fun with perspective. Don't forget to download these printable worksheets as well as other workshop material and a bonus in the PDF if you haven't done it yet. And if you're on Instagram and you'd like to share some of your creations and exercises and perspective drawing, it would be fantastic if you tag me at David_Drazil, and I'll make sure to send some love your way. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to keep in touch. Cheers!